At 12:41 in the morning, on March 8, 2014, 239 people boarded a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Families said goodbye, passengers settled into their seats. Pilots prepared for another ordinary journey. Nobody on board could have imagined that they were about to become part of one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. Because somewhere in the darkness above Southeast Asia, Flight MH370 simply vanished. And more than a decade later, despite the largest search operation ever conducted, nobody can say with complete certainty what happened. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport shortly after midnight. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, one of the safest and most reliable passenger planes ever built. Everything appeared normal. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah was an experienced pilot with more than 18,000 hours of flying experience. His co-pilot, Fariq Abdul Hamid, was young but qualified. On board were passengers from 14 different countries, including families, business travelers, students, and tourists. For the first 38 minutes, nothing seemed unusual. Then, at 1:19 a.m., air traffic control instructed the crew to contact controllers in Vietnam as the plane approached the border between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace. The response came back calmly. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those would become the last known words spoken from the cockpit. Less than 2 minutes later, the aircraft disappeared from civilian radar. At first, nobody panicked. Radar contact occasionally gets interrupted. Controllers expected the plane to reappear, but it never did. As confusion spread, something strange emerged. Military radar revealed that MH370 had not simply disappeared. The plane had turned around. Instead of continuing toward Beijing, it had reversed course and flown back across Malaysia. Investigators were stunned. Commercial aircraft do not make unexplained U-turns in the middle of the night. And what happened next only deepened the mystery. After crossing the Malay Peninsula, the aircraft headed northwest and eventually vanished from military radar as well. By then, it seemed as though the plane had slipped into the darkness without leaving a trace. But incredibly, the aircraft had not completely disappeared. Even after losing radar contact, MH370 continued communicating with an Inmarsat satellite system through automated electronic handshakes. These weren't distress calls. They weren't messages from the crew. They were simple digital pings, exchanged once every hour. And these tiny signals would become some of the most important clues in modern aviation. Engineers spent months analyzing the satellite data. Their calculations produced two possible paths. One stretched north into Central Asia. The other extended south into the vast emptiness of the Indian Ocean. As additional evidence emerged, investigators concluded that the southern route was far more likely, which meant something terrifying. The aircraft had potentially flown for hours over one of the most remote regions on Earth. The search effort quickly became unprecedented. 26 countries joined the mission. Ships, aircraft, satellites, and submarines scanned enormous areas of ocean. At one point, experts were searching an area larger than many countries. Yet day after day, nothing was found. No survivors, no wreckage, no emergency beacon. Nothing. The world watched in disbelief. How could a giant Boeing 777 carrying 239 people simply disappear in the 21st century? Conspiracy theories exploded across the internet. Some believed the aircraft had been hijacked. Others suggested sabotage. A few claimed it had landed secretly somewhere. Alien abduction theories even gained attention. As bizarre as some ideas sounded, they reflected a painful truth. People desperately wanted answers, and there were almost none. Then another twist emerged. Investigators discovered that the aircraft's transponder had stopped transmitting shortly before the plane turned around. Communication systems had also been disabled. This suggested that the disappearance might not have been caused by a sudden mechanical failure. Someone, intentionally or otherwise, may have altered the aircraft's course. But who? And why? Investigators examined every possibility. Could terrorists have been involved? No evidence supported that theory. Could one of the pilots have deliberately diverted the plane? Captain Zahari's home flight simulator attracted attention, and investigators recovered deleted data from it. Some experts considered the possibility of pilot suicide. Others argued there was no conclusive proof. Friends and family described the captain as experienced and passionate about flying. To this day, the question remains deeply controversial. Mechanical failure was another possibility. Perhaps a fire, decompression event, or electrical malfunction incapacitated everyone on board. Some experts pointed to a phenomenon known as hypoxia, where lack of oxygen slowly causes confusion and unconsciousness. In this scenario, the aircraft might have continued flying on autopilot until fuel exhaustion caused it to crash into the ocean. But again, no theory could explain every piece of evidence perfectly. For more than a year, the sea kept its secrets. Then, in July 2015, a breakthrough finally arrived. On Réunion Island, located east of Madagascar, a maintenance worker discovered a piece of aircraft debris washed ashore. Experts confirmed it belonged to MH370. After 16 months, the first physical evidence had been found. More debris would eventually appear along the coasts of Mozambique, Tanzania, Mauritius, and South Africa. Ocean currents had carried fragments thousands of miles from the crash site. The discoveries proved one heartbreaking reality. Flight MH370 had ended somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean, but exactly where remained unknown. Despite years of searching, the main wreckage was never located. In 2017, after examining more than 46,000 square miles of ocean floor, officials suspended the search. It was one of the most expensive and complex search efforts ever undertaken, and yet the ocean had won. Families of the passengers were devastated. For many, the lack of answers became its own kind of tragedy. Without a wreckage site, there was no final chapter, no complete explanation, no closure. Some relatives continued gathering every year, refusing to let the world forget the people aboard MH370. And perhaps that is what makes this mystery so haunting. Plane crashes usually leave evidence. Investigators reconstruct events. Questions are answered. But MH370 challenged that assumption. It reminded humanity that even in an age of satellites, smartphones, and advanced technology, there are still places on Earth vast enough to hide secrets. More than a decade after that quiet voice said, "Good night, Malaysian 370," the mystery remains unsolved. Somewhere beneath the waves of the Indian Ocean, hidden under miles of darkness and silence, the answers may still exist, waiting, undisturbed. Until one day, perhaps, the ocean finally gives them back. And when that day comes, one of the greatest mysteries of the modern world may finally come to an end.